Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, March 22nd. I'm Gary Stevens. It's the fourth Monday of the month, and this segment on the fourth Monday of each month, we set aside to talk about legislative topics with the second-term Republican representative from R-Zeeland Township, one of three who represent Ottawa County in the State House. He is Brad Slagh. Brad joins us via the Zoom connection. Brad, good morning, and welcome back to WHTC's Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary, and good morning to all of the folks that are out there listening to us today. It's a great spring day, isn't it?
Excellent spring day. Let's hope the farmers can be able to enjoy it. I know we still have maybe a couple of frosty days ahead, but it's not too bad. And of course, Brad is a former R-Zeeland Township supervisor, former Ottawa County clerk. So those topics, farming and being in the finance stuff, Brad could be able to handle it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Brad, I do want to get to this topic right off the bat. The situation involving Marlena's Bistro on Holland's south side. I'm not certain that might be in the district of Mary Whiteford because it's the Allegan County side of 24th. It's basically a block or two away from your district, but still, you, along with Representative Whiteford, Representative Steve Johnson from Wayland, and State Senators Roger Victory and Eric Nesbitt were reportedly going to have a press briefing speaking about the Marlena's situation. Clarify that up for me first and then talk about the situation because your name was included among those lawmakers as part of this press briefing.
Yeah, so first of all, I was there. It's scheduled for 11 o'clock, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it because I'm talking to you right now, and we're scheduled to go until 11. So whether I can make it or not, but the important thing for me, Gary, is that there is two divergent kind of thought processes. One is that it would include all of the restaurateurs across the state of Michigan have suffered under a bunch of rules that have kept them from being able to be open. When grocery stores were able to open, hardware stores were open, all kinds of other things were open, but we were keeping people from being actually inside of a restaurant. That's a problem for me. Those kind of rules stop people from being able to do their work. It's their livelihood. And I think this is just one of those restaurants that's had that. But on the other side, we have to have rules to make our society work. It's the grease that enables our society to actually happen. So it's a both and kind of thing. I was going there to speak just to those two topics and just to find out what's going on. It does obviously impact my district because I've got people that both frequent it from my district and probably are employed there. So obviously there's that kind of thing that is concerning for me. I need to be engaged and involved, but I also am wanting to be a bit cautious because rules are important.
I will do one thing right now, a piece of housekeeping in that regard. Brad, we're going to button up our segment about 5 to 11. So that you can participate in this press briefing at 11 a.m. So we'll tell our listeners, if you have a question for Brad Slagh, we have about 15 minutes from the time I'm speaking right now, and my clock says 10:42 at 395-1450, 395-1450, and you can ask a question of Representative Brad Slagh. So again, we'll let you go a few minutes early so you can participate in this press briefing. Now, you mentioned it's a double-edged sword. Yes, Marlena has some concerns about this, and some of those current concerns could be seen as legitimate, rightful concerns, but there's also a mechanism that's in place that can be able, if you have a problem with some of the things going on, to do this lawfully. And that line, some say, has been crossed in this situation. And as a result, maybe some of the things that Marlena is saying and doing, she would have better legal footing if she went different ways than the ways that she has done this far.
And I would agree with you. That's the problem. Often when we get into law, we don't all see things exactly the same way, right? We see things the way our backgrounds, our understanding, our position makes sense. We don't always see everybody else's position, and so we have to be careful about it. The law is there. Hopefully, we'll find out a good way to take care of this. We had lots of other restaurants who stayed closed. Those folks are not happy that, if there's not some sort of penalty for being open, then obviously everybody should have just stayed open. So, and maybe that's what should have happened. I don't really know, but we need to be careful and balanced in the way that we approach things.
395-1450 if you have a question for State Representative Brad Slagh. I'm thinking about restaurants that have closed and did not reopen. Off the top of my head, the one comes to mind, it's in your district, Goog's Pub and Grub. They had other factors, I believe, in their situation, but they're one that basically could not stay open. They were closed. They opened a little bit for takeout, but they made the decision, again, for other reasons too, but certainly this outbreak that happened a year or so ago sort of maybe help accelerate that factor. That's the first that comes to mind when we talk about restaurants that, impacted. Well, I'm looking at another one in Zeeland that also could not stay open for carryout because of the fact they couldn't, the carryout wasn't enough for them to go.
Yeah, Elbow Room in Zeeland, the Alpen Rose downtown Holland. So there are multiple restaurants that are not open today that were open before the pandemic started.
395-1450. Let's get to the phones. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Hi, I understand that one of her defenses is, one of Marlena's defenses is that this is only the small restaurants, the small businesses. Are you aware of any larger, more prestigious places that are allowed to stay open with no masking and so forth?
The answer would be no. I've not heard of any restaurants that weren't able to or were able to not have masks or to stay open and serve larger crowds. I've not heard of any of that. So that would not be something that I understand is part of the issue at this point.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. 395-1450, 395-1450. Other larger chains have given up the ghost as well in this state. And let's put it this way. It wasn't the reason. I want to make that straight out there, Brad. It wasn't the reason they were closed because they couldn't be open because of the pandemic rules, but it didn't help the matters with some of the chains in that regard. Let's get to another call. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Yeah, hi. A couple other questions about some stuff that Marlena has supported and her supporters have supported. So we'd like to find out if you believe the same thing. Do you believe that the COVID lockdown was fake? And also, do you believe that the COVID itself is fake? Because she has said that, as well as, do you believe it's okay to not adhere to health guidelines and allow health inspectors into restaurants?
Let's get the comments and hang on the line if you have a follow-up as well. Go ahead there, Brad.
So is the virus fake? No, I don't believe the virus is fake. I think it's a real virus. I think there is really a health concern, but I don't really, personally, I don't really believe that it's all that much different than the other flu viruses that we have, the corona kind of viruses that are out there. So from my perspective, it is, we took it further than it needed to go. I really believe we needed to shut down at the very beginning to say, well, we don't really know what's going to happen with our hospitals, our healthcare systems. That was an important piece. That lasted a couple of weeks. And then after that, everything switched from protecting our hospitals and our healthcare to protecting people. And that's where I think we should have been drawing the line and saying, no, that's not the government's role, is to protect the health of the people specifically. It is the role of our country to protect us in generally, but not specifically in that way. So we need to take our own responsibilities for our health.
Well, that's unlike some past events that have happened, from smallpox in the 1800s to other timelines when there has been things that have shut down the country for health matters. There is a precedence, and I think that if you think that, then you must not want to get the vaccine or anything else if you don't really feel that it is as dangerous as what we've been told, because you have a $1 trillion package that have been passed. You have pharmaceutical companies that are cranking out stuff, at breakneck speed in order to vaccinate 70% of the population. I think it's serious. So I think that you might want to revisit what you're saying, because it's almost like you really don't think it's real. So it's that's very disconcerting for as a Republican. So
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much, Brad. You want to follow up on that, please?
As I said at the beginning, I think it is real. It is a real virus. It is deadly. So is the flu virus that we have every year. If you look at the CDC records, people die from the flu every year. So yes, it is concerning. Yes, it is a real thing. I think that responses to that were maybe heavier handed than they needed to be as we went on.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for State Representative Brad Slagh, we have about 5 minutes left in this particular segment before we let Brad go. Peg has a question from the newsroom.
Just a quick framework for the flu versus COVID-19. Nationally, the flu kills between 25 and 70,000 people across the nation on an annual basis. And I believe we're over 500,000 people in the last year who've died from COVID-19. Can you frame how you see that as not being that much different?
So thanks for the question, Peg. It is that I've seen some numbers that look different than that, bigger than that from a flu perspective, influenza stuff on a normal year. And it's interesting that our flu deaths this year have almost disappeared. So you've got to look at, is there a shift, and how big is that shift?
395-1450, 395-1450. Brad, I also want to get your thoughts about something that I got a press release on earlier this morning, a couple of hours ago, from the minority Democrats in the State House. They are calling for they are going to have a press briefing at the same time that there will be a press briefing, pretty much 11:15, where state Democrats, the Democratic House Leader Donald Lisinski of Shiloh Township, that's out in the Lansing area, as well as Oak Park Democrat Regina Weiss, and Ferndale School Board President Mike Davison. They are going to have a press briefing. They are calling for the House to immediately release $840 million in federal stimulus dollars for all of Michigan's public schools. And the press release, Brad, stated, no break until Michigan public schools get stimulus dollars. Obviously, you don't know and we don't know yet the full basis of this press briefing from the minority Democrats in the House, but they're saying that the majority Republicans in the legislature are holding up funding, basically in a political tiff with the Whitmer administration.
Right now, I believe there are several bills that have been passed from the House that were Senate bills, and those should be on the way to the governor's desk. And so I'm believing that the dollars that would be there would be able to accommodate instantaneous money when the governor signs those. So I don't know about the 840 million or 860 million, whatever that is. I don't know that number specifically and what it represents, nor do I know if there are timelines for its usage or what its requirements are. So I can't speak to those directly.
There are some who are not happy with some of the vetoes the governor has made over the last couple of weeks. And I'm not quoting, but I'm referencing a press release from former Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley, who's the president of the Small Business Association of Michigan, unhappy that one of those vetoes was money geared for small business. And Calley said they were in the process, and there's not anything tied into Governor Whitmer's restrictions for that veto, and that's what made it disappointing to him in that regard there, Brad.
Yeah, I think there were several things. There's unemployment insurance there in one of the things that she voted, and you have to remember that businesses put in the money for unemployment insurance. The government said we're going to pay additional unemployment to folks. That wasn't part of the original plan when businesses were funding it. So all of a sudden the fund is significantly lower. I think about $4 billion lower than what it had been. So there were dollars tied to that to try and give money back to the unemployment, and those dollars were voided or vetoed. The dollars for the small businesses were vetoed. There's a number of things that were disconcerting in there, and those things were not necessarily tied to education or anything else.
One final question, and then we'll let you go, Brad, and it ties in with the ongoing efforts to try to pass a spending plan for fiscal 2022 that will begin on October the 1st. Let's just say the first two sessions between the legislature and the Whitmer administration have been rocky, to say the least, about getting a spending plan in order. The budget veto, 147 of them 2 years ago. Last year, a little easier because of the COVID-19 situation. Brad, are we going to have another, drag out, slug out fight to try to get a spending plan that both the Democrats and the Republicans can like, or maybe we might get something by September 30th?
Well, the law says we're supposed to have it done by June 1. We're supposed to have our budget stuff out by June 1. I still think that there's a real good shot that we will have a budget out and be asking for approval on. Does that mean that we won't be negotiating still from there all the way to September? That's possible. But I think both the executive, the governor, as well as the legislature, want to have a budget done. We want to be able to put the funds on the table and be able to get them to be used. So my answer is I think we're going to see something happen, and it will be done on a timely basis.
State Representative Brad Slagh of Zeeland Township, want to thank you very much for joining us today on Talk of the Town to share your thoughts on some of the issues of the day. Wish you and your family well over the next month. And if all goes well, let's do this again in April.
Great deal. I appreciate it, Gary. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Brad Slagh, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.